Hello guys, this is the last video I'm going to record to you about Unit 10 grammar section, and it talks about past abilities and emphatic structures. Let's start. Past abilities, the most common one that we use to talk about them is could, and this is to talk about general skills or abilities in the past, like when you say I couldn't skate when I was a little kid, but now I can. You're using a past ability using could. You're talking about it. Or for example, I could be awake many hours without feeling tired when I was younger. You are using past abilities with could. So let's see some other examples. When I first started my career, I could work long hours without a break. They hired her because they knew that she could do the job well. At this time last year, Santiago couldn't speak English. So in this case, we are using past abilities with could. What I want you to notice is affirmatives and negatives. I know you know this rule, but I want you to check it out because at the end of this topic of past abilities, I will give you extra notes about these words that we can use to talk about past abilities. The second one is was able to and were able to, and this is used to talk about specific achievements. For example, I call our informatics help desk and they were able to resolve the issue. Were you able to get in touch with Gary? And Kathy wasn't able to get there in time because of the accident on the highway. So this talks about something, as it says, specific achievement about someone could have done it in plural or in singular. And I want you also to notice for affirmatives, in this case questions, and negatives, okay? Now, the last one, manage to. This is used to talk about specific achievements that were difficult. For example, no one thought she had a chance to win, but somehow she managed to get enough votes and win the election. When Carla quit without giving notice, it was difficult for us, but we managed to handle everything. How did they manage to find a suitable candidate for the position in a short time? So in this one, it was a situation that was very difficult, but they achieved it. And notice again, affirmatives and questions. Why? We're going to that part right now. For could and was were able to, we can use the negative form of the auxiliary. If you remember, the negative form of could was couldn't, and from was were was wasn't and weren't able to. But with managed to, we must use the auxiliary to change it to negative form, which is didn't, or in the case of the questions, did, that it was in the last examples that we saw. Now changing to the next, I want you to please notice these sentences, and we're going to make them more emphatic. We're going to emphasize into them using the words in brackets, like for example, they are doing something quite unprecedented. We're going to use what. The answer to it is what they are doing is quite unprecedented. What are the things that you can notice? Okay, what goes at the beginning of the sentence? We are writing the first part of the sentence, and then we are adding an auxiliary that helps us complete the sentence with the last part of the original one that is quite unprecedented, sorry. Now let's check another. The shellfish made Jasmine sick. We have to use It was. How can you do this sentence? More emphatic. Okay. Again, we follow the rule of the example. It was goes at the beginning. Then we are using the topic that we are talking about. The shellfish. And we are using, in this case, what is this? Do you remember it? Yes, a relative clause to join the sentence with the last part of it that is made Jasmine sick. Another example. I came by bus because my car has broken down. The reason. The reason why, because remember why always answers to a reason. I came by bus is an auxiliary to unite the sentence that my car has broken down, and here we're using another relative clause. Is that a relative clause or a participle clause? Think about it so you can review the previous topics. Another example, the last one. The guy who told me about the new club was Zach, and we have to use Zach. So Zach was the guy, we're using an auxiliary. The guy who told me about the new club. This auxiliary is in there. So now that we have seen these examples, let me erase all my writing so you can detect the rules that we use to make them more emphatic. Okay, now let's see the real topic. Emphatic structures. We often emphasize a particular part of a sentence, perhaps to contradict what someone else has said or for a dramatic effect. If you remember the previous examples, there were sentences that were just only to contradict or just only to make it a little bit dramatic or to add up something to emphasize it. In speech, we can do this with stress and intonation alone, but we can also do this by changing the position of elements in a sentence in speech and in writing. In this unit, we're going to look at the ways we can manipulate grammar to emphasize something, mainly by splitting one sentence into two parts. These kind of activities called, or these kind of sentences are called cleft sentences. So remember, cleft sentences are the ones that are splitting one sentence into two parts. Why I'm telling you this? Because we're going to use that term, the whole topic. Cleft sentences, it is, it was. Sentences introduced by it is or it was are often used to emphasize a specific subject or object. The introductory clause is then followed by a relative pronoun. For example, it was I who received the promotion. It is the awful weather that drives him crazy. So we're emphasizing the subject or the object pronoun, and we are changing it to a relative pronoun. Cleff sentences with what? Sentences introduced by a clause beginning with what are also used to emphasize a specific subject or object. The clause introduced by what is employed as the subject of the sentence as is followed by the verb to be. For example, what we need is a good long shower. What he thinks isn't necessarily true. So we're using the what. We are emphasizing the subject or object of the sentence, and then it is followed by a verb to be. That's why we have is or isn't in the case of the second example. And exceptional use of do or did. We usually know that do and did are auxiliaries that help us to do past or present sentences. So in this case, we're gonna see a different way of using them. That's why it's exceptional use. We use them in order to emphasize something we feel strongly, and these auxiliary verbs can be used as an exception to the common grammatical use rules. Why? Because we are not supposed to use them in affirmative statements. But in this case, we are going to use them like that. For example, no, that's not true. John did speak to Mary. We have heard these kind of statements before, but what we usually say is John spoke to Mary, right? And in this case, we're using, as it says, exceptionally, that John did speak to Mary. I do believe that you should think twice about this situation. That's another expression that we are used to listen to, but we would say I believe only. That's why it's exceptional use of that auxiliary. This form is often used to express something contrary to what another person believes. These kind of statements are to contradict completely something. Okay? So now, any question you may have, I hope you had enjoyed this video. Please forgive me for all the noises that maybe you are going to be hearing around it. You know, it's quarantine. We have a lot of people in our houses, and I could have done this a little bit silent, but if I had, then I would have to kill everybody. No, that's a joke. So, any question you may have, remember, send it through Teams or through the email. And remember, this is the last topic about Unit 10 grammar. Love you. Take care. Bye-bye.